Hey everyone, and welcome to my friend the reader mid-year book tag. So, I've seen a couple of these on BookTube this last week, and it made me interested in doing them. Both Sean the Book Maniac and Claire Reads Books did some really great mid-year wrap-ups to a certain degree, where they answered a bunch of questions in terms of what their reading's been like this year, but also what their reading goals are for the rest of the year. So I thought I would do that and tag a couple of people at the end. I haven't done many of these, so here we go. So the first question is, what is the best book you've read so far? And for me this year, two ones. One is, and neither of them were published this year, but I think they're the best. One is The Ministry of Utmost Happiness by Arundhati Roy. And I did a video for this already where I raved about it. And I think I may have done a Goodreads review as well. I can't recall. Anyways, I'm going to post the video link just below so you can take a look if you want to hear me lavish praise on it for 10 minutes. Well deserved. In terms of nonfiction, I read Blood in the Water, which is an account of the Attica prison riots and the state brutally taking it down in the early 1970s, and also it details the aftermath, the legal aftermath, both attempted criminal prosecution of the prisoners as well as litigation against the state for years afterwards. It won the Pulitzer last year. It was brilliant, and as someone who has a bit of a history background, I did 2 degrees in it, mostly American history. It's a tome that I hope people read for decades to come. Important lessons, both politically and historically, in terms of the consequences of the prison industrial complex. Anyways, so those are my 2 favorite books that I've read this year. The second question is, best sequel you've read so far? Usually, most years I wouldn't be able to answer this. I don't tend to read series, but I read the second book in the 3 Body Problem series. This one's called The Dark Forest. It was great. I listened to it. I listened to the first one as well. It's very much hard science fiction, lots of physics. I'm not a science buff or have a science background, so definitely out of my comfort zone, but it is fantastic. It's such a captivating imagination from the writer in terms of this future world of impending doom. I thought it was brilliant. Anyways, definitely worth picking up. New release you haven't read yet but want to, and this seems to be a common theme. I see Sean the Book Maniac picked the same one I was going to pick, which was There. This is a book I won off YouTube from a Bibliophile's Journey, and Keely over there did a book giveaway. This has received heaps of praise, including both on BookTube and other social media communities I am a part of. I am planning definitely to pick it up in July, and definitely when the release I'm eager to embrace. So, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? So anyways, I had to do a little digging in this because there's 2 waves of big book releases. One is the spring in preparation for the summer, and then almost the Oscar season of books. Most of the books tend to come out in the early fall. We've had a pretty busy first half of the year, so I had to figure out what are the anticipated books. One is, and I don't know if it's going to be released or not, it's been mentioned on Goodreads, and that's Eleanor Catton's next book. She won the Booker Prize several years ago for The Luminaries, which was amazing, and she has a new book coming out that I don't even know the title for. But since I'm in Canadian, I'm going to mention 2 Canadian books that I'm anticipating coming out this year. One is Patrick DeWitt, who is the author of The Sisters Brothers, the hilarious Western, which is being turned into a movie. You can see the trailer on YouTube, and that's French Exit. Don't know much about it, but I didn't read Major Under Mojo yet, even though it's on my Kobo. But I like his style. I like the dark humor. in terms of how he conveys his stories. I probably will pick it up. And the other one is Rawi Haj's Beirut Hellfire Society. Rawi Haj is super well known in Canada, at least for two of his books. De Niro's Game, which is the one I've read, which takes place, I think it takes place, it's been a while, so here's why I have to say it. I think it takes place in Lebanon post war with Israel in 1982, so it takes place in the 1980s. It is great. And then Cockroach is another one of his books, which I haven't read. Anyways, this looks great. Beirut takes place in Lebanon. Super interesting geopolitical area in terms of everything that's encompassed there, both conflicts among the Middle Eastern people and their own rulers, as well as the conflicts with Israel. So a lot going on there. Rawi Haj is also the partner of Madeline Tien, who wrote that wonderful book that I adore, Do Not Say We Have Nothing, which sadly Claire Reid's books did not like. Heartbroken. Biggest disappointment this year was The Essex Serpent. I know the Brits on BookTube loved this book. It was released a couple of years ago by Sarah. The author's name is Sarah Perry. It takes place in Victorian England and deals with a recently widowed woman and her son visiting Essex and encountering a mythical beast that is haunting the town. It was loved. You know, it's safe to say that several booktubers that a lot of us follow adored this book. So I recommended it for my book club, and I had high hopes. And unfortunately, I thought the language was too ornate. It was too much, too full of itself, to be honest. The plot was plodding and slow, and I found it a difficult task to read, to finish, which I hate when that happens. It wasn't a bad book, but I didn't think it was necessarily something that I would ever go back to. So she has a new book coming out this year. I'm unlikely to go back, because if The Essex Serpent is her at the top of her game, then, and that's the style and the themes that she's going to explore, it's just not for me. And too little time in life to waste on authors are not going to connect with. So the next one is, what's the biggest surprise you read? And this one, okay, is The Mars Room by Rachel Kushner. I know some people loved her. Flamethrowers, which is the only book I'd read before from her, that kind of deals with motorcycle culture in Italy after the Second World War. I was unimpressed when I read it several years ago. It may have just been a poor time to read it because a lot of people adored it, and I think she has a previous book that deals with Cuba and the pre-Castro era. Never read, so I went into this one cautiously. The story follows mostly one woman in a California penitentiary, but also some auxiliary stories from various other players. I listened to the audiobook. Rachel Kushner narrates it herself, which is always a risk with narrators, but she was great, and the story was captivating. It was fantastic, both in terms of delving into an incredibly serious problem in American society of the impact of incarceration, and incarceration seen as the solution to all social ills, but also the intimacy of the stories being told were heartbreaking and powerful, and strong voices whose the kinds of stories that are often neglected, both in the mainstream media and in literature. And I thought it was great. I am sure Kushner is going to get longlisted, at least for the National Book Award. It's going to be on dozens of, or several top 10 books or lists at the end of the year. I think it's an accomplishment, and I'm happy I gave Kushner another chance. And I think I will go back at some point and read her first book. I'm not sure if I'm going to go back and read Flamethrowers, only because I don't like rereading very often. Again, not enough time, and it's and even though my few rereading experiences have been fruitful and often giving me a fresh appreciation for something I wasn't crazy about the first time, probably won't waste my time here. Favorite new author, debut or new to you? And I'm going to choose Kayla Ray Whitaker in The Animators. This was released last year. It was on the Tournament of Books bracket. It was such an amazing story of two friends who are involved in the animation industry, women in the animation industry, and it delves into the minutia of that industry, the stories that both of them decide to tell about their lives through their art form. It is a revelatory in terms of the mental strain of art creation and friendships that are brittle and flexible and intense within that creative process. It is an easy read. Pick it up if you've had a chance. I thought it was something that I'm going to think about for a long time, and it's one of my future next question or upcoming questions is going to deal with it as well. Anyways, great book. Pick it up. Newest fictional crush. This one's a little odd. I'll just pick one. Romy Hall, who's the lead voice in The Mars Room. Might as well go with the bad girl, but anyways, her voice is super powerful, and in terms of the vulnerability she exposes to the reader in her narrative is amazing and captivating, and hence my literary crush. New favorite character. I'm not usually into this, but I'm just going to choose Anjum, who's the transgender character in Arundhati Roy's book, The Mystery of Utmost Happiness. Again, she's a hilarious character who is in many ways the glue to these various strands of stories that are told in that book, and she's everyone orbits around her, so she draws them in, and it's definitely a fantastic character. Favorite review you've written, or for BookTube, favorite video you have done so far in this year, and I think that is the discussion I had about Junot Diaz. I had some rather hostile responses to it, which was a bit surprising. I think people who didn't actually end up watching my video, and I thought I was attempting to make an honest discussion about how do we deal with our favorite authors when they do something that's problematic. And I never called for boycotts, and I never called for overly judging until we know everything about it, but I really wanted to delve into that question, especially in the context of the Me Too movement and how we deal with art in the context of artists who are problematic. And that was a discussion more than an order about anything. But anyways, it got by far the most reviews. For most of my BookTube videos, I think I'm getting 30, 35, maybe 40 views, which I'm fine with. I'd like to get a few more, but I had over 600 for that one particular video, so I tapped a bit of a nerve, so kudos to that, I guess. Sorry, I missed one of the questions, so I'm slightly out of order. The book that made me happy. I do not read books that make me happy per se. I don't like reading comedies for the most part. I read Less. It was good, but I didn't think it was as hilariously funny. It was quaint and romantic, but it wasn't a book I was going to laugh out loud for. So I read books that make me feel miserable, and I think a lot of us who read literary fiction to a certain degree are into the glutton for punishment, and so I couldn't pick one there. What is your favorite book to film adaptation you saw this year? Well, for book club in January, we actually ended up reading Kazuo Ishiguro's The Remains of the Day, which I had read before, and I was lukewarm about it. I reread it, and it was amazing, and I went back and I watched the film again, which I had seen when I was very young, and I remember loving the film when it was released. It stars Emma Thompson and Anthony Hopkins, so they delivered some of the best roles they've ever delivered before or ever delivered on screen, and it is such a heartbreaking film. And I think in some respects, actually, I know some people's attitudes about the book is that they missed the heartbreak, that moment in that book where you're supposed to take a deep breath and breathe out and sigh with sadness. The film captures that better in some respects. What's the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received? I am going to go with Shame. This is Salman Rushdie's book, and the sun's a little strong, so I'll put it here. I love the minimalism of it. I love the beautiful artwork. I'm so looking forward to reading this, and I will do so by the end of the year, hopefully. Okay, what book do you need to read by the end of the year? And I'm going to try to read Any Human Heart by William Boyd. This is a big one. I think it's over almost 500 pages. Again, this is an adored book. I am looking forward to delving into it. And I don't know much about it, so I think I'm going to enter, other than it's like an epistolatory novel, so it's told through letters and journals, which I'm curious how he pulls that off. So anyways, that's it. I'm going to tag two people. I'm going to tag Laura Frey, and I'm going to tag Keely from A Bibliophile's Journey. So if they did watch this video and went to the end, they'll know I tagged them. Anyways, I'm looking forward to the second half of the year. I've read 55 books so far. We'll see in terms of keeping it up. I have my goal of 100. We'll try our best. Anyways, have a good one.